I am sitting here with a fellow a lot of people ask about, and already been reminiscing. This is the one and the only Pete Stamper.
Hey, you just wanted to hear my sexy voice, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. We were talking. You know, we actually have a lot to talk about. If we ever could sit down and get to where we can get together, we've always been working. You know,
Oh, yeah.
for a full lifetime since '72, something like that.
I was going to ask you, when did you? What was the year that you started?
I think it's '72.
72. Okay.
That's when you mistakenly invited me.
Yeah.
I tell that story all the time.
Were you already on the barn dance? Or
No,
were you?
no,
Were you not?
I wasn't. John Lair, as a matter of fact, he came in right after I had been invited by you, and just one morning, said, "Do you sing?" And I said, "Not much." He said, "Well, I've got an opening night. Would you like to sing?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And so that was a lot of fun too. Then, but you didn't think I was going to take you up on that, did you?
No, I didn't.
And
Well, I'm proud that you stayed. However, if it hadn't have been for you, I might own the radio station today. Because when I had it leased with the option to buy, and you were my salesman, I realized that you were so good that if you left, I would be stuck with it. So I told them I didn't want it.
Oh, I've heard you tell that story before, and
It's true. That's true.
And this guy here, you've been in show business. You go back to what year?
I started on radio in 1945.
Yeah, and an icon. He's in the Hall of Fame down here in the Valley, and Kentucky Broadcaster of the Year. And I've had the pleasure of working with you most of our lifetime, just a short time. You had about 10 years in it before I got to meet you and begin to work with you, and learned a lot. And
Well, I've not done a whole lot myself, other than the fact that I've had contact with a lot of famous people. Now that has done me more than anything else. Not anything that I've done, but it's just the fact that and I realize that now, because when I watch television, I see so many of them that are not with us anymore.
Right. How did you first get into show business? Anyway, how did you first get into the business of entertainment?
A boy by the name of Clarence Ray Williams. We moved next door to my uncle. He built a little old 2-room house for my mother and my grandmother and me. And I always got a French harp. I think harmonicas are the real name. Every Christmas. And on the Christmas of 38, I got one. And this was in the summer of 39. And I was outside blowing on it. And this boy that lived up on the hill, I didn't know a thing about him. He heard me and came down and wanted to blow on my harp. And we got acquainted. And 2 or 3 years later, every now and then we'd run into each other. 2 or 3 years later, he's come to my house and said, I found a mandolin. I'd like for you to buy it, and I'll help you learn to buy it. And my grandmother was making a $21 a month old age pension at that time. Mm-hmm. She gave me the money to buy it. I think it was $8. And I bought it, and he taught me a little bit how to play it. The problem was it was out of tune. And he taught me to play it out of tune. But he was a guitar player, and a buddy of his, same age as me, was a guitar player. And the three of us got together and called ourselves Pine Valley Pals. And he was 16, and he quit school into the 10th grade. And me and James in 1945 was on our way home on the last day of school. And Clarence Ray met us and said, I've arranged for us to be on radio every morning at 6 o'clock at WHOP in Hopkinsville. That was 30 some odd miles away from where we lived. None of us had a car, and gas was rationed. And but what I didn't know was that people had never been to a radio station. Everybody was anxious to run us up there every morning. But that's when it started.
Now, where was that located, that radio?
WHOP in Hopkinsville.
Hopkinsville.
Yeah.
So you got your start down in Hopkinsville, Kentucky.
Yeah, Hoptown.
And then you moved on up to Renfro Valley at that point, or?
I went into the Army and came out after a year, and I was out 10 months, and the Korean War broke out with the Chinese, and they called me back. And I went back in for some paperwork before I was to be shipped out. And I was at Fort Camp, I can't think of the camp right now. But anyway, I was depressed because me and Clarence Ray was with a band at Madisonville, Kentucky, and every day, and playing some shows. And here I was, pulled back into the Army. And I didn't want to talk to nobody. I started out of the barracks, and I heard this voice. And I thought that might be somebody from my home.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw 4 or 5 men standing out there under a tree. And I got close enough to them to see I did not recognize anybody. And I started to walk on, and the voice spoke again. And curiosity got the best of me, and I walked over there. And when I got there, I heard them talking about picking and singing and everything. And I got a chance to tell this voice that me and Clarence Ray had a comedy act. We were known at that time as Drip and Drizzle, the Rain Brothers.
Drip and Drizzle.
And I was Drizzle. And he said, I'm a quartet. It was his bass voice that got my attention. He said, I'm with a quartet at a place called Renfro Valley. And he said, why don't you all come down this coming Saturday night? We had 3 weeks before we had to ship out to Korea. He said, why don't you come down? And I got back into home, and I told Clarence Ray about it, and we were real anxious to do it. So we come to Renfro Valley, 250 miles.
Mm.
And John Lair wasn't there, but we were invited to come back. And we went home and then came back the next Saturday night. And John Lair still wasn't there. I think he was in New York, maybe, talking to the sponsors. But his sister, Mrs. Mullins, was at every show, and she had contacted him and told him about us. And he sent word that when I got back from Korea to come down, we had a job. And that's how it all happened. A year later, I got back home, and we started on the show the first Saturday night in January of 1952.
Of course, now that's the Renfro Valley. That's how you got started there. Now the radio station. How did you first get into WRVK in 1957 when it was turned on?
I left the Red Foley show in Springfield, Missouri, and went to Nashville, and was intending to be a Grand Ole Opry entertainer. I was working the Opry every now and then, but not that much. And we there was me and Minley and Jeff over here living down there in Nashville in this big house. Expensive, and winter was coming on, and I didn't know if I was going to make it or not. I was doing a little road work with Porter Wagner, but he was only paying. Rock and roll had hurt country music at that time, and Porter could only pay me about $25 a show. But I got a call from John Lair, and he said, we put in a radio station here this year. This was in 1957. And he said, I wondered if you wanted to be a part of it. Well, that was really what I was looking for, a job, you know. So we packed up and come back here. And Tom Hargis, the editor of the Gene Autry and Roy Rogers TV shows, was John Lair's partner. And I know the reason they hired me, because Joe Clark had made such a big impression with his comments on radio. They thought as I did comedy, I'd be the same thing. But it turned out to be I wasn't. And so Tom Hargis fired me 6 months later. But then I went to Lexington and went to work with an insurance company, Prudential Insurance, and then come back to Berea and work with a Kentucky insurance company in the Rockcastle County area. And John Lair hired me back as a full-time in '65. And he put it all together, the 37 years from '65, or 22 years, which ended in '87, and then the 17 years, this last 17 years. Put it all together, that's 39 years at WRVK.
Now, you spent a while with Dolly Parton. Dolly Parton, you spent a while with her. Tell me a little about that.
I was hired as a comedian to start with, but she needed a road manager. And I acted as her road manager until Don Warden, who was Porter Wagner's road manager, was hired. And I come back to Renfro Valley, and I was supposed to just work with Dolly, you know, on occasion when I was doing comedy. But her career went in very opposite of what she had thought it would be. And I only did a couple of shows, and then I came back to WRVK full time.
Well, you say, well, she came down here a couple of times to see you. Once, right up here on this hill, she came in, and I think she and Jane Fonda had come into town that time.
They called me, and Don Warden called me and asked me, he said, Jane Fonda is going to do a country movie about a Kentucky woman, and
doll maker.
Yeah, doll maker, and wanted to know how Kentucky women talk, or Kentucky people talk.
Can you give us a little sample of that?
Yeah. I told him, I said, I know a feller that really talks country. It was Jess Baker, is who it was.
Yes,
and he said, well, line it up. We'll come up there, but don't tell nobody who it is. And so I decided to. So I went to Jess, and I told him, I said, Jess, friends of mine wants to come up here and hear some Kentucky talking, country talking. He said, heck far. I know a woman that talks as country as you'd ever want. And he was talking about his aunt. And while they were up here, Jane Fonda, they went out to his aunt, And then they left, and she came back a couple of 3 or 4 weeks later. But in the meantime, they had sold their farm and moved to an apartment. But she still stayed with them. In fact, she traveled up and down Main Street in Mount Vernon exercising, walking.
She did. She walked right by my classroom there all week.
People didn't know who she was.
They didn't know who she was. So.
But,
I knew, but I wasn't. I was sworn to secrecy.
Is that right? Oh yeah, you was up the radio station that day,
yeah.
Well, the highlight of the whole thing is that the bus. Don Warden was driving the bus, and it was parked between the radio station and the campground building. And they were leaving, and I got on there just to say hello or say goodbye. And Dolly got up and kissed me. And Jane got up and kissed me. Now, how many can say they've been kissed by Jane Fonda and Dolly Parton?
I was sitting there. I didn't get a kiss, but I was sitting there. Does that count?
But anyway, that's part of it.
And of course, WRVK, you left. You and I worked together up through July of 2019, and your retirement began finally at that point. And right now, your health is good. For as a lot of people ask about your health, and your health is pretty good to be a fella your age. Yeah.
Well, my problem, I had 2 problems.
We got
the biggest
problems, both me and him.
The biggest problem was getting up and getting ready to get over there. But the other problem was the voice. It just wasn't me.
Yeah. Well, it sounds just like you right now.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Well, I've got 2. In fact, I'm wearing them right now. I've had them for about an hour. Hearing aids.
Yeah.
Oh, listen. I'm going to be talking my leg off because I sound so good
Okay.
with these hearing aids.
You've actually got to hear yourself talk then.
Oh, yeah.
But those are marvelous to have, and enables you to, what's really going to be neat is when you go outside and the birds, you get to hear the birds singing again and things that you've missed out on. Yeah.
Huh.
No.
I hadn't thought that. Can I wait till spring?
I think it might have sprung on you.
Hey, listen. Watch Kevin Roberts, would you?
I will.
And don't let him bring any snow in.
Well, Thursday I've got a text today that he was bringing some in.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh,
My
wow.
goodness.
Yeah.
Huh.
A skift.
Yeah.
You know what a skift is, don't
Yeah.
you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do.
But I just wanted to come by and say hello and let people see you and hear from you. And this is the legendary Pete Stamper, been a friend of mine for an entire lifetime.
Well, can I come in on live one day?
You sure?
I'd like to run into David Collins.
You just come in. You're on Hoot and Holler, right?
Yeah,
Your old Dave, good friend of mine.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the holler in quite a long time.
You think you can hoot and holler a little bit with us?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Woo!
That's about the speed we go at there. Well, listen, it's good to talk to you. Have you got any final things you want to tell us, or any jokes you want to tell? Can you tell us about Naomi Lou Frisbee?
No, I would like to say that I'm here today because of WRVK. Had it not been for WRVK, I could not have stayed at Renfro Valley.
That was your livelihood.
And live on $25 a week. But WRVK, the salary that I made, let me stay here. Mm-hmm. So I have to give all the credit to WRVK, the home folk station.
Yeah. Now, you work for, how many different owners have you worked for at WRVK?
Well,
John Lair, of course.
John Lair, Tom Hargis, and
J. Hal Smith.
Hal Smith and Hank Cochran. Hank Cochran owned
Before J. Howe, yeah.
No, they owned it together.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, it was known as Cochran Smith Broadcasting.
Okay.
And in fact, I told Jeannie Seeley one day, I said, while you were married to Hank, I said, you were probably owner of the Renfro Valley radio station, too. And she probably was, in a roundabout way, you know. But then I worked for, who was it? What was the man that bought it?
Howard Gosser?
Yeah, I worked for him.
Did I have to tell you? Did I have to say that?
You don't. I'm going to tell you. That's why I left.
That's why I left and went to Berea.
That's why I left. And
I went to WKXO.
I didn't come back until what's his name? That sailor.
What's that? Yeah, Grandpa.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we both came back at the same time. And that's.
I tell you what, that one guy stripped off everything. He stripped off the control room and everything, and took it somewhere else. What was his name?
Well, we'll not get into his. We weren't very happy with that fellow there, but we both came back at the same time, or with Sailor Broadcasting.
Yeah.
Grandma and Grandpa, Charles and Bobby Sailor.
I've got a poem.
Oh, Charles,
That-
great guy.
Yeah.
I'd like to read on your program someday.
All right.
It's called "Who Is Paul?" Before he called me to come back to the radio station, I'd met him 2 or 3 times, and we were kind of beginning to be friends. And I've learned a lot about him, and his success is still a mystery to me. Here he owns 2 farms, a radio station, a furniture store, and he grew up like climbing up and sitting in trees. In fact, his mother would come out there to get him to come down for supper, and he wouldn't come down, and they'd have to send their supper up, and he'd sit up there on a limb and eat it.
Oh goodness! I better not let you get too much more out here. You'll get more information out here than I can handle. Listen, Pete Stamper, it is good to be in your home with you here this afternoon. I actually just took a break. I'm getting ready to go back up to the station here and finish up my day. But love you. You're a great friend, and look forward to working with you some more down the road.
Okay, thank you very much.
All righty. All right. See the old handshake there? Yeah. All right. Catch you, buddy.